A little water into there. The purple I want pretty watery actually this time, because if I use that as my color behind that I'm going to glaze, what I'm going to do is let the background show through, but I'm just lightly going over with color, and then I'm going to go around the edges. And this is a reverse painting, kind of. This is something I never knew existed too before I started teaching watercolor. So this is painting everywhere that isn't the spot with a really thin color, which is why it's called glazing. You want enough color that it shows the difference between that and the flowers, and then you want to, but not so dark that you can't see the background anymore. So, try not to see much brush marks in this. If you need to, kind of brush across it a few times. Around, just make sure that now my purple is getting more activated in the color and it's showing up more, so I need to make sure that I brush across a few times. And the important thing here is going to be that you wait then, after you do your glazing here, you wait to do the next step until it's totally dry, because otherwise it will kind of fuzz out from those spots. So I'm going to go over to, this is why we're doing 2 at a time. On this I'm going to go over to where the cabins are. Now this time I'm not going to put resist on the cabins. I could put some tape down or something over the cabins, but I can just be careful around it too. So I'm going to pick up some green and a little bit of blue, and I'm going to get this so that it's relatively dry brush. I don't need it to be fully dry brush, but relatively. So I'm going to grab a paper towel. And kind of rub back and forth a couple of times, get it kind of splayed out a little bit to start with. And then I'm going to just tap down in here so that I can pick up that color. And I'm going to start with my trees behind here. Notice that I'm putting my pinky down to kind of support myself. And I'm kind of building up just a base color first. So this is really, really light. I'm going to go across the top of the cabins just so that I can control where I'm going here. And then I'm going to build up. And I want it to kind of be an unevenness because it's going to be like it's pine trees behind. And they grow at different rates, although a lot of the pine trees, I'm going to go across here for a little ways and let this go nearly all the way across. A lot of the pine trees do grow to similar heights in forests, so I'm going to make it look like they're about the same but getting a little bit farther away. So the getting farther away is where it will get shorter, coming over here. Like I said, this is only a base coat. You can still see the green behind it, that's not, or the sky behind it. That's not a good thing. Just going to fill this in a little bit. Then I'm going to come back with a darker color. So I need to pick up my colors again. I may need to splay it out again just a little bit. I'm going to go into there and I'm going to tap in some deeper color. Again, I'm going to go across the roof just to know where I'm going and to protect it. Then I'm going to build up from that spot. And work my way out here. Now, if I was doing this for a final painting that I was doing, I would put many layers into this because you want that darkness of the shadows and as if there's a forest and actually not just a set of trees or a line of trees going out there, and that comes with shadows and all that kind of stuff. For speed's sake here, I'm just going to put 3 coats down. I'm going to pick up a lot more straight color here. A little bit more green to make sure, splay it out just a little bit. And then get a shadow going more towards the bottom than anything. Go across the top of the cabins. I don't have to be as careful off going down the bottom of these trees because I'm going to go in and add some color towards the bottom. Okay. So, going down then, I'm going to pick up some water and I'm going to wash out the base of the trees here by going across them and kind of make it look like there is ground going under here. Because I have that open spot and I want it to stay relatively white, I'm going to avoid it a little bit. Just let this kind of come down and turn into a little bit of a dry brush as it comes down the front, and I can pick up a little bit deeper color to go back towards the back again, towards the shadows. Okay. A little too much green since it is winter and not a little bit more of a bluish green. Now I just got that pretty watery. I need to be kind of careful. So I'll cross that. Okay. Now I'm going to let that side dry for a little bit before I go into the cabins and doing the tree in front. So here I'm coming back to the purple side. Now with this I'm going to switch down to a different brush, more of a rounded brush, and from here on in I'm going to paint the details in on here. So I'm going to pick up some purple. Make sure it's getting a little darker, which it is anyway. And I'm going to go and feel and make sure this is warm, and it is, so it's good. Along the edges, and again I'm going to pick a direction that this is going to come from. It's a little dark. I'm going to pick up my purple and I'm going to let the shading come from one direction. So on each one of these petals I'm going to put a little bit of shadow towards one side. Coming down here too, that will be consistent in all of the daisies because they would all have the same lighting on them. Let there be water in the ones coming closer. You can always go darker. You can't go lighter very easily, so that's actually a little bit dark. I'm just going to take my paper towel and just kind of push across the paper towel. I didn't wipe with the paper towel. I laid the paper towel down and wiped on the top of the paper towel. While it's still wet, that totally works. So if something gets kind of dark like that did right there, I'm going to add a little bit of water to it. And I'm going to pick it up again. So that picked up the color. And finish that out quick. And then I'm going to go in eventually. Here and go quite dark. And I'm going to go back to the one that I started with and see if it's dry enough. It should be. And I'm going to put kind of the definite details in here. And make sure the center kind of comes together and works out. Now, if you're doing the daisies, which again you can do anything that you want, you're doing the daisies, you want to make sure that You kind of curve when you do this. You'll notice that one in the center kind of curved two directions. This one I want to do wet on dry. Coming out from those. And I'm just going to show you the one for speed's sake here. But I would keep going in and darkening that down and doing some different things to that also. But there's your details on them. You may have to pick up a little bit of color towards one side a little bit, but I don't want to do too much right now while it's still getting a little bit drier. Then I'm going to pick up some yellow for the center. That doesn't have to be what you choose in the center, but it can. And I'm going to brush the center of this one since I just did that one. I'm going to let that one dry a little bit before I do the center of it. You can pick up some additional color even though it's got the texture behind it. You could drop a little bit of color into there, but we'll leave that for later. Back to the cabins. So on the cabins I'm going to use a little bit more of a flat brush. This one is going to be another glaze inside of the cabins here. Pick up the same color that I have been working with. I'm going to glaze these. Now I got a little far in on this one, so I'm going to work up that spot just a little bit and see if I can blend it in. Now I avoid the top of the cabins. I just do throughout them just to give a little bit of shadow. The top makes it look like there's snow on the roof. Okay, and I'm going to do a little bit deeper of a shadow coming down from that. Especially right up next to it because that's our light source. In this situation would probably be more of a moon situation, but pick up a little darker and pull it down here. And I'm going to let that part dry so that I can come back with the details on top of it. This one I'm going to do the tree up in front. I want this to be super dark, so I'm going to pick up lots of color from my activated colors here because this has to cover everything up that's under it. So I splay out just a little bit, but for the most part a little bit wet through the center there, but the most part I'm going to let this come up so that it's coming towards the top. And I'm going to make my tree. Again, you can do an outward tree. You can let it go all the way off the bottom, or you can let there be a shadow underneath it. This one I think I'll let there be a shadow under. Now the hardest thing for me is to not do the exact same thing on both sides. Now some trees do actually grow that way, but for the most part they don't. So I do one side first and then I come back and I do the other side after it. Because otherwise you have a tendency to make a perfect Y and that never looks good. So use just a scratch paper on the back. So what people end up doing is putting their trunk down the center and they start coming out and you end up with this tree that looks something like this. So try not to do that. Build up one side first and then down the other. I can still see through my tree, so that can't be the situation. I need to add more color. I might need this to dry down a little bit before I do too much because it's getting a little bit wet. But you just add another layer of color into it and you keep doing that over and over again until it gets dark enough that you can't see the tree line through it. Coming down and so that it gets some depth to it also. Now don't try to fully cover that again. I want shadows. I don't want to totally do it over and over and over again with color. Since I did do a spot so that I could do a shadow underneath it, I can create my shadow coming out from that. Let's see if my cabins are dry enough. Pretty close.